Hello everyone, in this video we are going to learn Jetpack Compose. In order to understand the Jetpack Compose, we want to have some basic fundamental knowledge in the Kotlin language. But if you don't know anything about Kotlin, don't worry, because here I am going to explain the Kotlin concept which is necessary you to understand the Jetpack Compose. So in this video I am going to cover three things. First one is Kotlin Basic for Jetpack Compose. The second one is designing the UI in the Jetpack Compose. The third one is state management in the Jetpack Compose. First I am going to open the IntelliJ IDE for explaining the Kotlin Basic for Jetpack Compose. After that I will cover second one and third one in androidstudio. So let's go to the IntelliJ IDE and just click the new project. And I am name it as Ludo. And I select the language as Kotlin and I select the build system as IntelliJ and I just click create. So you can see here our project loaded successfully. I just expand the main. So right click here, new, and I just click Kotlin class or file. So I name it as Kotlin for Compose and I just hit enter. So you can see our class is created successfully. First I am going to declare a variable in Kotlin. In Kotlin, there are two keywords we use to create a variable. One is var, another one is val. Just take the var to declare a variable. Var a, so this is var, so this is variable name. Then the type of the variable, that is int, right? So the integer. Then I will give the value as 5. Now let's see how we can create a function in Kotlin. So in order to create a function in Kotlin, we have to use the fun keyword after that function name. So I am going to name the function name as @num. So @num is our function name. Then if the function return anything, we have to mention the return type. Or else, if it is not return anything, we can mention unit. Unit means void in Java. So in my case, I am going to return the integer. Then I will implement this. So in the end of the statement, what I am going to do is I just return 0. If you take the var, that is mutable, which means once you assign the value to the var, you can see, then we can modify it. For example, here I am calling the var a, then I just give it as 7, right? So you can see here, this is not showing any of the error. For example, I just create another variable in val. Here I just name it as b, and the type is integer. Then I am going to give the value as 9. So again I am calling this variable here, right, b, then I try to give the value as 4. So now you can see our IDE is suggesting one error. That's because this is val. Val mean immutable, right? Immutable mean once I give the value to the b, which means the val, then I can't modify it, right? That's why I am getting this error. For example, if I change as var, the error will go on, right? So this is a major difference between the var and the val. For example, I just keep it as it is and I delete this one. I just type this is mutable, this is immutable. The major difference between function and the method is method always belong to the class, but function we can create outside the class. For example, I just create the function, so I use the fun keyword. So normally in function, the first function name is start with small letter, right? So I just make the return type as double. So another thing in function is that's called name parameter. For example, what I am going to do is, for you can see here, marks1 is an integer, mark2 also integer. So now I am going to call this function inside this the add number, right? So I am going to call this method get average. So here I just pass the marks1, right? So marks1 is the first parameter, so that is 24, and the second one is 89, right? So marks1 is 24, marks2 is 89. But here in function, the special thing is name parameter. For example, I can directly call this function parameter, right? So marks1, then equal, that is 24, then marks2, that is 89. So if we using the name parameter, the order is not necessary. I just cut this one, I just put it here, then this will also fine. So this Kotlin basic is enough to understand the Jetpack Compose. So let's go to the androidstudio and create one project. First I am going to create a new project. So here I am choosing the empty compose activity and I just click next. Here I want to name the project, so I name it as sun. So then I just click finish. First I am going to explain the IDE generated code. Let's do some modification. So I am going to cut the code which is inside the set content. I just cut it here and I just go to the bottom and paste it and comment this one. So I am doing the arrangement here. I just comment this line. If you ever work with Android, you might familiar with this code. This was a app comeback activity, but here this is component activity. And you can see here, this was set content view. Then we have to pass the layout file. But here, this is set content. Here we have to call a special function that is called Composable Function. So what is Composable Function? It's a special function with the Composable Annotation. This is we use to create the user interface in modern Android development. So here I am going to comment the main activity class code. I just select this one, I just comment it, and I am going to uncomment the below lines. You can see here these two functions, right? You can see here this greeting and the default preview. These two functions not belong to this main activity class. You can see by default there are two functions. One is annotated with composable, another one is annotated with composable and the preview. Let's consider the first function greeting. So as usual, function name start with a small letter, but here this function name start with capital letter because we have to name the composable function which is start with capital letter, right? That's why that greeting function start with capital. You can see here this is text, right? So text is a composable function. So this composable function can call from another composable function. So now let's see the default preview function. I just expand it and make sure you are in the split mode, and I just build and refresh this UI. So you can see here this preview annotation is responsible to show the UI in the right side. So what I am going to do is I just copy this one and paste it here. So this is showing the error because the function names are same. So I just put one to differentiate these two functions, and now I build and refresh this UI. Now you can see this is showing two different preview in the right side. That's because you can see here I just put hello, right? So now you can understand this preview is responsible for showing the UI in the right side. So I just delete the second preview function, uncomment this one. The actual UI we only can see while running this application. That's because the composable function which is inside the set content, right? So if I call the greeting inside here, I just pass my name and I just run this application. So you can see here inside the set content, I call this composable function and I am passing my name, right? So this greeting is this greeting. So in the parameter that is string, right? So I am passing my name. That's why I can able to see my name in the inside the mobile. That's because of this set content. I just minimize this one. I just build this one. In Jetpack Compose, every UI is a composable function. So in order to build the UI, we have to call the composable function. For example, to build the text view, we have to call the text view composable. So if it's button or edit text, we have to call the respective composable function for that specific UI. Here I am going to create a composable function. First one is outside the main activity. The second one is composable annotation. The third one is function name start with the capital letter. So inside this composable function, I am going to call the text view. So I just call the text view composable. You can able to see this is f, right? So function. So I just hit enter. So after that it's asking. So here I am going to give the value as programming makes sense. So this is our YouTube channel name. So I like to see the preview in the right side. So in order to see the preview, what I have to do is I have to annotate it with preview, right? So I just put the preview and I just build and refresh, and you can able to see I can see the preview right side. That's because of this preview annotation, because I annotated this composable function with this preview, right? As of now I am going to comment this one. I just call this my UI inside this here. So inside my composable, what I am going to do is I just copy this composable and paste it here, right? I just give the value as our channel and I just build and refresh this one. You can see in the right side our channel text overlapping the PMS, right? So just add another button. So I just call this button. So I just build and refresh this one. Now our button is overlapping the previous two composable, right? Now you need to understand the important concept called rows, columns and box. Just for the understanding, this is column, this is row. If you see my cursor, right? So this is the first row, right? This is the second row. So in column wise, this is the first column and this is the second column. If you understand this one, then you can able to create your own UI in Jetpack Compose. So if you want to arrange your items vertically, right? So you can see my cursor. So if you want to arrange your item vertically, so what I'm going to do is I just create one rectangle here, right? So in the rectangle, I'm going to color this one. You can see here first, second and third, right? So if you want to arrange the items vertically, you have to use the column composable, right? So here you have to use the column composable. But if you want to arrange the item horizontally like this, you have to use row composable. So let's go to the Android Studio. So here, so what I'm going to do is I just hit enter, right? So I just create a row, right? Row composable. I need to import this one. I just option enter and make sure that is you are importing from the compose, right? So I imported. So just think, right? So if I put this in the row, right, which means this is right. So if I put this into the row, that will come like this in this way, right? So I just cut these three things and put it inside this row, right? Okay, I just arrange this one and build and refresh. So this is arranged horizontally, right? That's because we are using the row property. But here you need to understand one thing, right? So these two texts are in the top of the row, right? If you want to arrange this one, right? So what you have to do is, so if you click this row with the command, you can able to see the definition. In the definition, you can able to see vertical alignment, right? So this is not the arrangement, this is alignment, right? So I again go to the main activity. Here I just type vertical alignment. So in vertical mean, right? So this is the vertical, right? So this, you can see my cursor, this is horizontal and this is vertical, right? So in vertically you can set the alignment, right? So alignment, I want to make this text into the bottom, so I just type alignment bottom. So if I run this one, let's see, right, we can able to see this is come to the bottom. So if we want this one in the center, right, so just put center vertically and just build and refresh this one. This is arranged correctly. So now I am going to delete this one. So instead of using the row, I just using the column, right? So if we use the column, so what we have to do is I just delete the row, right? So this is the column, right? So we can able to see the items arranged in this manner, right? So let's build and refresh. you can see we can able to see the column, right? If you click this column with the command and see the definition, you can able to see that's called alignment, right? Horizontal alignment, right? So just call the horizontal alignment. And here, right, so you can see in the text in the this PMS text in the start point, right? So I won't make this PMS text into the center. So in order to do that, what we have to do is I just call alignment, right? Alignment dot center horizontally. So if I build and refresh, I can able to see this PMS come to the center, right? So this button also come to the center. So this is rows and column. So by default this is the box property, right? So that's why we can able to see the all the overlapping, right? So if I option enter, right, so I import this box, right? So I deleted this one, right? So defaultly this is the box property, that's why we can able to see one item overlapping the another item. So let's build and refresh, see how it's look like, right? So now you can see is defaultly it's taking the box property, right? That's why we can able to see the overlapping. Just summarize what you have learned in the row and column. So if we want to arrange the item horizontally like this, we have to use the row, right? So if we use the row and we are arranging one item inside the row like this, then we can use vertical alignment to align the items like this. We can use the vertical alignment top, vertical alignment center, and vertical alignment bottom, right? Center means center vertically and vertical alignment bottom, right? So this is how we have to use the vertical alignment. This is not arrangement, this is vertical alignment. Column means arrange the item vertically like this, right? So we are using column to arrange the item vertically like this. Then we can use horizontal alignment. Remember, this is column mean vertical arrangement. Inside the column we can use horizontal alignment to align the item like this. So if we align like this, you can see alignment start, alignment center horizontally, alignment end, right? So we can align inside the column like this, right? We can use the horizontal alignment inside the column. Now try to access the arrangement property inside the row and column. First take the row and use the arrangement property. So I am going to name as row, right? So I am going to the definition row. So you can see here. So now we are going to use the arrangement, right? So this is horizontal arrangement. I just copy this one. I just come here, horizontal arrangement, right? Then after the horizontal arrangement, what I am going to do is I just call the arrangement, right? So arrangement center, right? So after I made this one as arrangement center, now I am going to run the app. There is no change, right? That because if you want to arrange any item, you want to have some space. Without space, you can arrange any item. So I'm going to take the entire mobile screen. You can see here, I'm going to take the entire mobile screen, right? So the thing is how to take the entire screen. In order to take the entire screen, there is one composable function called surface. So inside the surface, there is one property called modifier. Using that modifier, we can specify the space. So what I am going to do is I am going to create the surface inside the set content. So inside the surface, right? So I just hit enter, delete this one, right? So I just take the surface. Inside the surface, I just cut this one and put inside the surface, right? So the thing is, in the surface, I have to take the entire space, right? Entire space inside the mobile UI. So in order to take that, what we have to do is, if you go inside the surface, there is one property called modifier, right? Using this modifier, we can get the entire space, right? So I just call the modifier, and after that I just call the modifier. So here there is one property called fill max size, right? So I mean, if you see the below two, max height and max width, this is similar to the match parent in XML. But here fill max size mean this will take the entire screen UI, right? So I just keep it as it is and I just run the app now. So now you can see here, in the mobile UI, this is taking the arrangement, right? So horizontal arrangement, I am taking the sender, right? So let's see, I am going to use the other property, right? So if you cut this one, after that in the arrangement, there are 6 properties here, right? One is start is the one first we saw, right? So I just run this one. So all the items arranged in the starting point. After that, I'm going to take the second one, space evenly, right? So I just run the app again. You can see here in the starting point and the between the composable function, right? The composable items, this is taking the space evenly, right? So I'm going to take the other thing, space around. You can see here space around also behaving the same as space evenly, right? So then I will going to tell the difference, right? So now I am going to change the other property that's called space between, right? So let's see, space between mean, so this is taking the space between these composables items, right? So that's fine, that's how we have to use the arrangement, right? So if we use the column, I am going to use the column. So column mean vertical arrangement, right? So I just cut this one, I just call the vertical arrangement. So if you don't know anything, just click this with command and you can able to see what is the arrangement property, right? So that's all, and I call the vertical arrangement, then I have to call the arrangement, right? The arrangement also having the 6 property, right? So I just, what I'm going to do is I just call that bottom and see how it's look like in the UI. So all the properties that come to the bottom, because we are using vertical arrangement and we are saying arrangement bottom, right? So now I am going to use the space between, right? So if I give the space between, the composable item will take the space between. So now I am going to give some clear picture about the arrangement, right? So I found one article in the internet. You can see here there are 3 items here. So if we use the arrangement start, all the items come to that starting point, right? So this is arrangement end and this is arrangement center, right? So if we give the arrangement space between, that's the 4th one, right? After we give the space between, that will take the space between the items, right? So you can see arrangement space around, that will take the space around all over the places, right? So if we give the space evenly, that will take the same space between starting point and the between the items. So this is how you have to use the arrangement, right? So I will provide the link in the video description and you can refer that one as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the 2 properties, right? So here I am using the vertical arrangement. Now I am going to use the horizontal alignment, right? So I just type horizontal alignment. So I can see there are no suggestions here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to the column and I just can copy this one, horizontal alignment, right? Then I come back here and I just paste it here and hit equal, because this is called name parameter, right? So we can call this name parameter, then we can give the value, right? So I just give alignment center horizontally, right? So I just put a comma, then that will arrange, right? So just run and see how it's look like. Now it's come to the center, right? So now what I am going to do is I want to take these items all together in the center. For that case, what I have to do is, you can see I want to use the vertical arrangement, right? Because this is column, then I have to use the vertical arrangement. So vertical arrangement, right? So I just call center. So if I run this app, all the items that will come into the center, that because I am using the vertical arrangement center. So if you go to the column property, I cover the vertical arrangement and the second one is a horizontal alignment, right? So the first one I didn't cover, I only cover about the size, right? I mean here I only consider that modifier dot fill max size, right? If you want more information about the modifier, please comment, I will create a separate video for modifier. I already mentioned, guys, in order to get the NDS screen, we have to use the surface, right? So is it necessary to use the surface to get the NDS screen? This is not necessary, because let me show how, right? So what I'm going to do is I just comment this one and I just call the my UI here, and inside this my UI you can see in the column I can call the modifier, right? then I call the modifier, and then I am using the fill max size. So let's run and see. You can see here, right? So there is no difference before and now, but the only thing is if we use the surface, right? So you can see this question, when should I use Jetpack Compose surface composable, right? The thing is, if we use the surface, right, you can keep the material surface code make the code easier, as well as explicitly indicate that the code uses a material surface, right? So if we see this code, right, in the surface, right, so we can specify the material thing. One of the major advantage in composable is reusability. For example, you can see here, so I created a my GUI, right? So inside the my GUI you can able to see there are three child, right? One is text, another one is a text, that one is a button, right? So in order to name this button, we have to call the text here, right? So if we call the text here, I just add click me and run this application, right? So I can able to see click me over the button, because the click me is a child property of this button, right? That's why I can able to see click me in the right side, right? So in some cases we need to add other composable function, right, like a checkbox or combo box over this button, right? So in that case what you had to do is, right, so I just delete this one, right? So what I'm going to do is, right, so inside this my UI, right, my UI composable function here is, so I just add a parameter called content, right? So the type is a composable, right? So then that's a composable function, right? So that's returning unit mean void in Java. So I'm getting one error in the preview. I just delete this one, right? So this preview is just seeing the preview in the right side, right? So now I am using the real device, so that's why I'm deleting this one. And here, so you can see here I just pass one parameter. The parameter type is a composable, that's composable function, right? So here I just take this content, right? So I just put inside this content, right, as a composable function. You can see that's a green color, right? So now what I am going to do is, you can see the place where we are calling this method, right, my UI, is showing one error. That's because we have to implement the lambda function here. So here I just can call the text view, right? So I just put click me and run the application. You can see click me, right? So in some cases I won't add other widget, right? So for example, I just comment this one. So I won't add one checkbox, right? So checkbox, right? So the value is true, and I just implement as MD, right? So I just run this one. You can see here, right? So if you zoom this one, right, so you can see in the UI, right? So now this is come as a checkbox, right? But here this is how we have to increase the reusability of the composable function, right? So if you want the text view, you just can pass here, then that will come here as a content, then that will assign to the button property, right? So this is how we have to make sure the created composable function can be reusable. As of now, we learn how to design the UI in the Jetpack Compose. In Jetpack Compose, there is another important concept called state management. So now I am going to create one text input field. So in XML, we call it as edit text, but in Jetpack Compose, there are some different type of text input fields are available, like outline text field and text field. Here I am going to use the outline text field. So inside the column, I just create outline text field. So here we have to pass one value. So in order to pass the value, I just create one variable that's called txt, and initially I keep it as empty, and I call the txt here as a value. Then the on value change, right? For the on value change, so whenever the changes happen in the outline text field, we are getting that change as the it, right? So what I'm going to do is, I just copy this txt. So I just call this txt, and I am taking this it, right? So I updated txt with that on text change value, right? So let's run and see whether it's working or not. So you can see here I am getting the edit text here. So now I am trying to update the value. You can see here now I am trying to update the outline text field, but this is not getting updated, right? That because as per Jetpack Compose concept, whenever the value changes happen, we have to call the composable function again to show the changes in the UI. The thing is how to call the composable function again. So if you see the documentation, they mention anytime a state is updated, a recomposition takes place. So as per this line, if we update a state, then recomposition will happen automatically. To work with state, Composable providing some APIs. Let's see in practical. So I'm going to use one API that's called MutableStateOf, right? So I just by mean delegation. So this delegation mean is kind of a inheritance, right? So I just take MutableStateOf and I initialize the value as an empty string, right? Then what you have to do is, right? So I just run this application now. So I just press here and trying to enter. So it's still remaining the same. The thing is, you can see, so now we are delegating using MutableStateOf, right? So but what happening here is, right, so whenever the value changes happen, right, we are getting that value change and assign to the txt, right? So txt is state, right? So if the state change happen, the composable calling this function again, right? So that's called recomposition. So again it's initialized to empty, right? So in order to fix that one, I just cut here and put it outside, and now I am going to run this app. You can able to see the outline text field getting updated, right? So is there any way to keep the state inside the composable? Yeah, we can keep state inside the composable using remember keyword, right? So I just cut this one, I put it here, right? So here I just use the remember keyword. So if we call the remember keyword, whenever the recomposition happen, this will hold, which means this value will hold by this remember API, right? So I just run this one. So now you can see our outline text field is getting updated, right? So now what I'm going to do is I just enable the auto rotation, right? So after I enable the auto rotation, I just rotate left. You can see after I rotate this one, this text disappearing. That because of the configuration changes. So if you want to keep the value after the configuration, we have to use remember saveable. I just option enter remember saveable. So now what I am going to do is I just run the application now. I just type and now I am trying to rotate my device. You can see after the rotation also, if you zoom and see, right, after the rotation also I can able to see this text is appearing here, right? So keeping the state inside the composable, it's not a good practice. That is tight coupling. So in order to overcome that, we have to use state hosting. So I clear all my previous unnecessary codes. So now I am going to explain the state hosting. So in order to explain the state hosting, what I am going to do is I am going to inside this set content lambda function. So here I am going to call the surface. So inside the surface, right, in the surface parameter, I just call the modifier. So after I call the modifier, I am calling the fill max size. So if I use this parameter, that will take the entire mobile screen UI. Then after that, I am going to create a composable function. So in order to create the composable function, we have to follow some of the steps, right? So first one is outside the main activity. The second one is composable annotation. Third one is composable function start with capital letter. The fourth one is in order to call the composable function, we only can call from the another composable function. So here, as I mentioned before, you can follow these steps. So first we are in the outside of the main activity. The second one is composable annotation, right? So the easy thing you can do is you can type the com, right? So after that, if you hit enter, that will create, right? So now I'm going to name it as, so I keep my first letter as capital, that's fine, right? So here in the fourth step I mentioned, right? So I'm going to call the button. So I just delete this one. So this lambda will execute whenever we click something in the button, right? So as of now I keep it as empty. So I'm going to create the other composable. This composable for show the UI, that's fine. Here I am going to create one text. I just create one parameter txt, that's a string. Here I use this txt. So if I use txt, that will not take the value. So I'm going to use the $. So now it's fine. So you can see here there are two composable function I created, right? So if you want, you can annotate this one, right? So I just annotated preview. We can able to see the preview in the right side. So if I build and refresh and I'm going to click, you can able to see zoom to fit screen. So if I click this one, I can able to see the UI. I just build and refresh. First preview function, my click UI, but this is showing the error, right? That because if we are passing null value, we have to give some value, right? So I just, as of now, I just keep it as empty, and now I build and refresh this one. You can able to see this is loaded, but we haven't give any of the text. So initially I'm going to give the text as hello. Now build and refresh. In your case, you can able to see this build and refresh. You can use this one, right? Build and refresh, right? And another thing, zoom to fit screen. This is a good option. I just click this one. So you can able to see after I click the zoom to fit screen, I can able to see the view, right? I created two composable function. So I'm going to call the composable function inside the surface, right? So what I'm going to do is inside the surface, I'm going to create a column. So column mean vertical, right? You can able to see my cursor vertical, right? So I just use the vertical arrangement. Then it is arrangement. Then I have to call the arrangement, right? So arrangement sender. So I put the comma, and after that, so I want to make the horizontally sender, right? For that case, horizontal alignment, right? I have to use the horizontal alignment. Then that is alignment dot sender horizontally, right? So inside this child, I mean inside this column child, I'm going to call this two composable, right? One is my click UI, right? The second one is a show UI, right? So I just call the show UI. Okay, now I am going to run the app. So defaultly I can able to see that this is hello, right? So what I am going to do is inside this, right? So inside this set content, I am going to create one variable, right? So variable called txt, right? Txt variable, and I'm going to delegate with MutableStateOf, right? So MutableStateOf. So this is inside the composable function. So I want to make the remember keyword, right? So I use remember. So I just cut this one and put it inside this one. You can see this text I am initializing to empty string, right? So if someone click this button, I have to change this text, right? So how we can achieve using the state hosting? My click UI, right? So have one function called on click, right? So if we implement any logic here, for example, making a API request or processing any data, right? Processing any data, right? Then if we call this my click UI, right? Then that only doing that special operation which you mention inside this on click, right? If we use this on click in this manner, I mean which is inside the on click lambda function, if we specify the function, that is not a good thing, then we can't reuse them, right? So for example, I just bar a, right? So initially I am going to give that value as 1, right? So the variable, right? So I just put the variable type as int, right? So here if I make the a and plus plus, then if I call this composable function in somewhere, that only can do this increment operation, right? So this will reduce the reusability of this composable function. For that case, so what we want to do is that's called state hosting, right? So here I'm going to create one function, my click function, right? So this is a function, right? This is returning unit. You guys see this is a function, right? So this is a function. I copy this one. So in order to create a function, I cut this one, right? So I called here, right? Then after that, you can see if someone click the button, that my click fun send the data backwards, right? So here I'm going to expand here and write the logic here, right? For example, if you want to count something, right? For example, this is text, right? So here I'm calling the text and I just call hello, right? So I'm calling the function again here, right? My click. What I'm going to do is I just use the count, right? I'm going to create one variable here, where count, so initialize to 0, right? Then I can, right? So I can increment the count. The thing is one function, right? So one function. So if we using this state hosting, we can do multiple things, right? So if someone click the button, that my click fund will work. So if it work for in this place, what we are doing is we are assigning hello to this text, but here the same function, here we are just increment by 1, right? So this will increase the reusability. So now what I'm going to do is I just delete this preview. This will showing the error, right? So here in the composable function I have to pass the text, right? So now I am going to take this text, right, copy and paste it here. So let's run and see how it works. Once I click the button, I can able to see the you click. So inside the column, so I am having one my click UI, right? So what will happen here is if someone click, right? So if someone click, we are passing that function. So that function will send the data backwards. So here that will come here, right? So if someone click, we assign the text you clicked, then we are taking the text and passing to the show UI, right? So if you go to the show UI, we are getting the text and passing into the text view composable. So if you passing the text view composable, then we can able to see the changes in the right side, I mean the mobile UI. State hosting is an easy thing. If you spend some time to understand this one, you will get a clear picture. And if you understand this one, please make sure to subscribe my channel. So this is the only help I am requesting from you guys, and thank you so much. And if you want any videos related to the Jetpack Compose or any topic, right, so you can mention in the comment. I will create a video in every week. So thanks a lot, and thank you so much guys.